All right, well, hello. We are getting close to the end. So we have this week and next week, and then we have a final. I'm gonna give you a good solid week. Get studying for the final. I'll do a video with some instructions on what it says and how to pass it. I'm using a new iPad from work to record this video. So they say it's going to be in HD. That's very exciting. But the difference is usually my notes are on the computer screen, so I'm going to be looking over here a little bit for my notes, but hopefully that won't be too distracting for you. So let's talk about money laundering. What is it? We hear money, growing up being a good Italian boy that I was, the word money laundering was used quite often in the movies that we watched. But really what it is, so as a boy, I always thought, they always say we were going to clean the money and this, that, the other thing. I didn't know what that meant. I always imagined, a big washing machine where they were taking these brand new bills that they stole and cleaning them up. But really what money laundering is, it's really if we can associate that a business is used, or that a group is using a business to basically to hide money transactions. That's where your money laundering comes into play, and you really see that with really high cash, low profit businesses. Restaurants are a great avenue for money laundering because it's such a high cash company that you can really launder quite a bit of money through that and make it look like it's a legitimate money coming in. You sold 50 more meals than you actually did, and that kind of thing. You're able to launder money that way. So that's what we're talking about with money laundering. So what drug that we discussed causes someone to become the most aggressive? Now, when I'm thinking about this, you think, oh, it's going to be cocaine, it's going to be heroin, it's going to be all these aggressive drugs. Well, actually, a lot of those are actually depressants, and they don't really cause a lot of aggression. Now, don't get me wrong, they do on occasion, and every drug has a different effect on people's body. But the drug that we find that causes the most aggression is alcohol. And that's where we really see that heightened agitation, aggravation from people that use it. Not always, once again, not always, but that's where we see the most. And so that was an interesting statistic for us. When someone believes that really drugs are simply a disease of addiction, and that people who are drug users are just true victims, that's really what we call that person. We put them in the classification called a public health generalism. That's their belief system, public health generalism. And they just believe that the disease of drugs is a public health issue, is very generalistic. And whether you agree with that or not, we see a lot of different types of addiction, food addictions and drug addictions and people addicted to caffeine and all kinds of stuff. So, is there truth to it? Yeah, sure. Is it something that people cannot overcome? Well, I guess that depends on what your belief system is and what the research you've done says. We hear this term a lot thrown out there. That's a recreational drug user. And that's a tough term, because a lot of people consider themselves to be a recreational drug user. And really, a recreational drug user is a person who doesn't use it frequently and uses it for just uses drug just as pleasure, not in a need. And it's hard to have someone like that. It's hard to have someone who's not addicted to those drugs. Many of these drugs are very addicting. Because what happens basically is when you use that drug, the most pleasure satisfaction you will have a lot of times with these drugs is the first time you use it. That's your highest high, and then you're always trying to catch up to that high, and you can't because you hit that high the first time you use it, and you continually become desensitized to it. Think about the first time you held hands with your significant other, and you're sitting in the car wherever you might be, and your little pinkies touch, right? And you have that flush, that rush of yes, it's the first time that our pinkies have touched, and then you're holding hands, and by 2 years later, you just grab their hand and you don't think anything of it. You don't have that rush anymore. And by 10 years later, you're sitting on opposite sides of the car, and by 15 years later, somebody's sitting in the back seat. But I mean, think about that first rush and how you kind of desensitize yourself to that, and kind of apply that to drugs. It's kind of like the same thing. You have that massive rush, and then you kind of are trying to build up and hit that rush again, and it just doesn't quite happen for you. Know what the definition of drug abuse is, and I think that's a pretty easy one for you to understand and learn. Legalization of drugs, I mean, that really is a radical approach to solving the drug problem. Do we have a drug problem? Yes. Are we fighting a war on drugs? Yes. Are we losing the war on drugs? And in my opinion, yes. I think that depends on what kind of drug, but in general, I think the answer is yes. Should we just stop and legalize it all? Absolutely not. And I think that as a society, you have, maybe we are losing that war, but we have a moral obligation to continue to fight that war. And I think that's very important for us in the law enforcement field to understand. Yes, we might feel like we're losing ground, but we have to fight this thing as long as we can. And there is some compromising approaches within that legalization issue, and that's really known as limitation, and it would limit what kind of drugs people can use, and kind of like prescription drugs, kind of put our cocaines and our marijuanas and our all those types of drugs on a classification scale. And it will just be a limited use for those drugs. So something to think about. It's something to think about. We're seeing it happen a lot with marijuana. And once we become desensitized to marijuana, we'll probably they'll start going after cocaine, and we'll just continue to go up that ladder. Because legalization realistically would eliminate the laws and criminal penalties for drug use. That's what legalization is all about. Know what the NDIC is? NDIC, and what they oversee and the counterintelligence that they do. RICO statutes. Now, I don't use RICO statutes a lot because there's a better way to use. There's a better way than RICO. Okay. So we're going to say RICO, and RICO is really used for federal government because in states there's a better way. Okay. So just understand, RICO is how we seize assets for illegal enterprises. I'm going to talk to you in a minute about a better system for that. Read up on the Harrison Act. The Harrison Act is an interesting act. It was back in 1914. They required like a $1 per year tax. It was really designed for physicians and that kind of thing. I think it was overturned in like 1927 or something like that. And basically, the federal government came in and said they couldn't regulate these physicians. But read up on the Harrison Act because you're going to see some questions about that. And know what forfeiture is. And forfeiture kind of is like the RICO, but it's also a term used within states. So I'll give you a good example of a good forfeiture. If you flee from me in your motor vehicle, and we get into pursuit, it hits the felony level. I can force a forfeiture on that vehicle because it's an instrument used in the commission of a felony. By our state statutes, I'm allowed to seize that vehicle. And so when you think about that, it's forfeiture. What president was the biggest fighter for the war on drugs, really gave it an influx in money and cash, and that was Ronald Reagan, And so love the guy. He did a lot for us. Did a lot of anti-drug act legislation, that kind of thing. I hate to say that we're losing it, but it is what it is. A report came out from the Office of National Drug Control Policy, that said that we were spending like $180 billion, that we were losing $180 billion in revenue, and the majority of that was lost. The majority, which was $126 billion, was lost in worker productivity. $100 billion lost in worker productivity. That's a big issue for us, and it's an issue that we have to address. I would also be interested to see how much productivity we lose as a result of Facebook. I bet it would be higher than $100 billion. But anyways, this is an issue we have to address. $128 billion lost. Know about the comprehensive drug abuse prescription and control uh, prevention and control of 1970. So that's a Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act of 1970. So basically, what that was that's where we started regulating prescriptions, and that's why you can't pharmacy shop anymore. And that's the legislation that helps make some of that pharmacy shopping and doctor shopping illegal. And well, the federal government and state agencies really use when they find prescription abuse within the system. All right, so my favorite case of all time, one of my favorite cases of all time, United States versus Ursuri. And so basically, here's what happens with this. This allows for police agencies to go after forfeited property with a civil act instead of a criminal act. And so that you kind of can breeze over that one and think, oh, that's no big deal. Let me tell you why that is so important. And so many agencies aren't using it, and they are losing a ton of money through it. So basically, the civil law says, allows, in most states, will allow you to say, as a police agency, hey, listen, we believe that this property was used in the commission of a crime. We believe that it was used for all these terrible things, and we're going to go after that property civilly. And I'm going to file, we as an agency are going to file a civil lawsuit against you to take your property. Here's your catch-22 in the law enforcement world for that criminal. What we are doing here is we are, so what the Supreme Court says is not double jeopardy, okay? Because it's two completely separate things. You're not being charged with a crime. Your property is being seized as a result of your activity, okay? So they said that we could do it. We could file those civil charges. Here's why it's important. Because we're going to file this civil charge for your property. And then over here, we're going to file this criminal charge. Well, this is going to take years to clear up, right, on a big case. This over here, civil case, goes away in less than a year. So what do you have to do to keep your property? Well, you have to go in and testify and defend yourself in civil court to keep your property. Well, if you've got a big criminal case over here, what is your lawyer not going to let you do? That lawyer is not going to let you go in and testify under oath about anything to do with that criminal case. And so you don't show up for court in that civil case. Well, what happens when the person has been served notice but doesn't show up in the civil case? The verdict automatically reverts to the law enforcement agency, and so they get that property. And so we were able to get a lot of drug property as a result of this. You know, a good example was here in South, well, here in Greenville, there's a huge law enforcement training center, and how it was seized was, and some of the officers in my department actually worked this case. So they were working this case. The drug dealer basically kept the property in some other person's name because he to try to keep himself off the radar. And so a big investigation was done, a lot of stakeouts and those kinds of things. And so the officers raided the house, got all these drugs all over the house. They called the owner and said, hey, listen, we are going to file criminal charges and civilly sue you for this property. He goes, whoa, I didn't know anything about this. I said, well, we're going after you civilly then. He's like, let me sign the house over. And before they left the house for the raid, those hundreds of acres of property were signed over to the agencies. Now, some people might, let's play devil's advocate. You're doing it for profit. No. We're trying to take drug dealers' property that they are using to facilitate their crime. And this is one avenue that we are using to do that. It is a quicker avenue. It allows us to take that asset and use it for law enforcement purposes. We're not taking little Johnny's, skateboard that he was riding around, delivering papers on. We're taking little Johnny's skateboard who's driving around delivering drugs. Okay, we're taking the guy who's driving around in his car delivering drugs. We're taking the guy's property who's storing drugs. That's what we're taking, and we're not taking innocent people's property. And so this is one avenue that we can use as a law enforcement officer to seize that property. And the Supreme Court has reviewed it and says this is an okay practice. It makes sense to us. You are taking property away from bad people. If they want to show up in court, and defend themselves and say this property was not used for that, they are welcome to do that. But until that happens, if they don't show up in court, that property is surrendered over to law enforcement. I think it's a great avenue. It's a great way to do it. We're having a war on drugs. We're fighting it, and this is one way we're going to win it. With that said, we've seen this increase in substance abuse, 15%. In 2006, they said 15% of all arrests were substance controlled or narcotics based. 15% of every arrest that we made. You got to run all those arrests: DUIs, traffic, domestic violence, theft, burglary, homicide, all these things. 15% were just drug related or narcotics related. The last statistic I want to throw out to you is the increase in women involved in narcotics. So since 1990, we've seen an increase of about 50% of the male population. There's been a 50% increase in the male population in prison from drug-related arrests, narcotics-related arrests. There's been a 108% increase for females in that. And so that's an interesting subject. I would love to see some discussion board comments on why you think that is and what do you think is causing that. So with that said, I hope you have a great week. We got one more week after this of just regular lessons, and then the next week after that, we are going to do our final. I'm going to help you kind of prepare for that, plan for that, get you through that. You all are doing okay in this course. Some people are doing extremely well. Some people are having some struggles, but we are going to get you through this. Just make sure, treat me like you treat your car payment guy when you don't have any money to pay him. Just communicate with me, okay? You stop talking to your car loan people, they're going to repo your car, okay? But if you communicate with them, let them know what's going on, you're going to be less prone to do that. Just communicate with me. Let me know what's going on. Keep me in the loop. We're going to get you through these courses just fine. Have a great day. Have a great week. I'll talk to you later.